All right, everyone. Sad news from my home state of Vermont. The override of Philscott's veto, and he finally did something useful for once. He managed to defeat this last year, but the Affordable Heat Act has now become law in Vermont. Just to be clear, this is basically the supermajority Dems flexing there, for what little he's worth, and I don't really esteem Philscott. Our rhino governor did try to veto it, knowing that there was a 50-50 chance that the Dems would have the votes in the House to override. They have a supermajority there. It's just it wasn't immediately clear they'd get like the 2 or 3 Dems not to defect, and in the end they all voted for it. So this is completely partisan, and I'll try to explain what it is. The basic premise is to make it more affordable to move to green energy or non-fossil fuel energy, basically, electrical systems, which are partially based on oil and coal and gas anyway, but, you know, the NIMBY climate changers, they don't want to acknowledge that, so whatever. Trying to explain that to them where U.S. energy actually comes from on the grid just leads to them balking at the concept of needing more nuclear power to make that more feasible. Like Vermont shutting down Vermont Yankee, although considering that there was rot in the wooden substructure and tritium release and other problems there, probably it is better to get it from Hydro-Quebec. Anyway, a lot of Vermonters use oil and natural gas and so forth. Oil, I think, is the most common heating methodology in Vermont. It sort of makes sense. I mean, Vermont's climate is, you don't get as much sun as you do down in Texas. Plenty of wind, but then the NIMBYists won't let you build wind turbines. Oh my God, you'll spoil the landscape. Not in my backyard, not on that mountain. Put it another mountain further so I don't have to see it when I look out of my deck. And these are mostly second homers. These aren't people that were born in Vermont. These are people that retired to Vermont or struck it rich and bought a second home, and now they're snowbirds, basically. They go down to Florida when it's winter, unless they want to go skiing, and then they enjoy a romp around the woods. They come to their 5th home in the state of Vermont for 2 weeks out of the year. They live a very efficient and climate-friendly lifestyle, by the way, with all of the houses and shit and the travel. Anyway, goodbye, Vermont. What's this going to do? It's going to force companies to invest in more efficient technology, if fossil fuels used, basically. It's going to be left up to bureaucratic purview. So, just to be clear, for those of you that are not from Vermont and to an extent New England in general, New Englanders love their bureaucratic legalese. Bureaus in New England do very, very well. They love to exert authority. Look no further than Slate Ridge, that ended up getting sued under an environmental court over unlicensed buildings because the neighbors complained about gunfire, and they figured, well, there's nothing that we can do. There's no law in the books that we can pursue charges on. They haven't harassed anyone, although allegedly there's not enough evidence. They didn't kill anyone. They're not planning to kill anyone. They're not starting fires, not arson. Oh, I know, these buildings here, these shacks, which are literally what they are, they're unlicensed. They didn't get the proper building permits, so they're not allowed to have a training facility. By the way, they're not allowed to have one anymore either, because we literally amended the law to stop them from being a problem in the future. Yes, pointed legislation is also another facet of Vermont. For those of you not familiar with the ins and outs of Vermont, the bureaucracy in Vermont and the supermajority Dems in the legislature basically wield dictatorial power in our state. What they're not compensating for is that bureaucratic overreach is going to end up in a situation where people who have oil or gas heating in their homes or power supply routed through, they cook with natural gas or something, they're going to be priced out of Vermont entirely. They don't have the money to make the switch to something else. The native cost of those heating sources will go up because you're putting more stress on the companies. The companies in the end will pass it on to the consumers. If you do what Vermont does with the internet, where you have a quasi-Comcast monopoly because other large servicers don't want to operate there, and literally Elon Musk and people like that are the only other competitors within the market, getting Starlink or some shit like that, getting sat service. Nobody else wants to lay down any fucking fiber. You end up with a backward situation. The internet speeds, for example, in Vermont, there was a part of Vermont called the Northeast Kingdom that didn't get home internet on a broadband basis until the last few years. I think that was like 2016 or 2015, thereabouts. They were using dial-up in the middle of the 2010s. I mean, yeah, it's rural, and you have to pay a lot of money to shell out to put the fiber in there, but Vermont forced them to. So because Vermont maintains a de facto monopoly through its corrupted business partners, the internet sucks there. What do you think is going to happen to Vermont's energy industry? Is it going to become monopolistic as other people leave the state, and so there are fewer servicers and with less competition? And then the government will come in, tax people more, and subsidize for the very poor, effectively paying people not to have switched away from the fossil fuel sources. That's what this will accomplish. The opposite of what the environmentalists want, and the Dems just voted for it. So I feel very sorry for working and lower class Vermonters. You're going to get priced out if you have a home. You might as well fucking sell now. Disclaimer, not official investment advice. I'm being totally hyperbolic. If I weren't, at least in the solidly middle class in the state, I'd probably be prepping to move right now. There are greener pastures. New Hampshire looks awfully nice this kind of year, so to speak. Texas is sort of a banging place. I realize that it's a little more difficult to do backyard gardening when you have to take a pickaxe through the clay-like soil unless you want to just do crazy-ass raised beds full of fire ants. But yeah, you can grow avocado trees. You can grow lime trees and stuff down there. There was one in the backyard when I was living down there. Really, really tasty, by the way. Helpful when you have tacos every day. Vermont's, this is messed up. The one good thing that Philscott's done in his fucking career gets veto overridden by a unanimous Democratic Party vote in the Senate and near unanimous in the House. How wonderful. Now Vermonters can pay more for their energy. That is what will happen. It will end up being like a feedback mechanism. You will have certain energy firms that cannot operate in that now more regulated market. They will leave. They will go to another state. They will go bankrupt. They'll sell off. They'll conglomerate with a larger business. They'll sell to them. And then with less competition, you will have higher costs. The regulatory burden alone will achieve that as well. So yeah, if you're an upper middle class Vermonter with a McMansion, you don't care. It's always slap another solar panel on the roof. Yay! And by the way, I do have a backup generator that runs on gas or oil, but don't tell my NIMBYist neighbors because they won't like the sound when it clicks on when the power goes off the next time we have a super blizzard or something. They don't care. They can stomach that cost. Can little old 75-year-old grandma who got her house in Vermont back when it was affordable, can she shoulder more of a burden, or is she already probably taking out debt to buy groceries? Sadly, that's the case even in states that are more economically coherent than Vermont. Even in states that are run by governments that understand basic economics, you still have a lot of people falling through the gaps just because of Bidenflation. Now you want to heap abuse onto them after abuse, insult upon injury, and drive more people out of our already dying state. The state is in decline. It's not in decline because it ain't beautiful. It's not in decline because it doesn't have an intelligent population. In fact, I believe the second most educated in the country. We've got it all in Vermont. We've got resources. We've got resplendent, splendiferous beauty. We've got a highly literate population. You know what happens when we give those kids a great high school education? Most of them go elsewhere. And they're smart for doing so. This shows the smartness of the population. All the young Vermonters move off. They go to the Dakotas or Texas or something and work on an oil rig. They go and teach in another state. They go to New Hampshire or whatever. They go to a place where there's greener pastures, and then when they're 60, they retire back to Vermont to take advantage of the expansively good healthcare system. That's what we've got in the state of Vermont. It doesn't have to be that way. Back 100 years ago, we were fairly industrially powerful. Oh, wait, there aren't any textile mills anymore. Whoops. By the way, the state was mostly clear-cut. Hey, tourists, by the way, there is no old-growth forestry in the entire state. Those big-ass trees that you see in central Rutland are about the oldest trees in the entire state. Those are from the middle of the 1800s, so enjoy Vermont's beauty, brought to you by clear cutting and sheep farming mainly. That's about all. Peace out.